Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled through the maintenance shaft deep beneath the Galactic Council's maximum security facility on Kepler Station. The metal tunnel barely fit his shoulders, and every few meters he had to pause to catch his breath in the stale, recycled air. Behind him, the soft hum of his portable scanner provided the only sound besides his labored breathing. Just a routine maintenance check, he muttered to himself, though his heart pounded with nervous energy. Marcus had been working as a systems technician for the Council for 3 years now, but he'd never been assigned to sub-level Omega before. The clearance had come through that morning with unusual urgency and very little explanation. The scanner in his hand began beeping faster as he approached a junction in the ventilation system. According to his work orders, there was a critical power fluctuation somewhere in this section that needed immediate attention. But as Marcus studied the readings, something didn't add up. The power drain was massive, far beyond what any normal facility equipment should require. He squeezed through a particularly narrow section and emerged into a small access chamber. The walls here were different from the standard council architecture above. These looked ancient, carved from some kind of dark stone that seemed to absorb the light from his headlamp. Strange symbols covered the surfaces, glowing faintly with an inner light that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. "What the hell?" Marcus whispered, running his fingers over the carved symbols. They felt warm to the touch, almost alive. His scanner was going crazy now, registering energy readings that shouldn't be possible. Following the strongest signal, Marcus found a hidden panel behind a cluster of maintenance pipes. The cover came away easily, revealing a control interface unlike anything in his technical manuals. The design was elegant and organic, all flowing curves and biomechanical connections. Most of the indicators glowed a steady blue, but one section pulsed an urgent red. Marcus pulled out his tablet and tried to access the station's technical databases, but nothing matched what he was seeing. Whatever this system was, it wasn't in any official records. His curiosity overrode his caution as he began tracing the power flows and data pathways. The red warning indicators led to what appeared to be a containment system. Massive power conduits disappeared into the stone walls, feeding something beyond the access chamber. As Marcus followed the conduits, he discovered they led to a sealed doorway marked with symbols that made his skin crawl just looking at them. His work orders said to investigate and repair any malfunctions, but every instinct told him to report this to his supervisor and let someone with higher clearance handle it. Still, the readings were becoming more critical by the minute. Whatever was behind that door was consuming enormous amounts of power, and the containment systems were starting to show stress fractures in their energy matrices. Marcus spent the next hour trying to understand the alien technology. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. The system was designed as a prison, using a combination of energy barriers, neural suppressors, and what looked like pain inducers to keep something contained. The longer he studied it, the more disturbed he became. The entity inside wasn't just trapped, it was being tortured. The neural suppressors were flooding its mind with anguish, while the pain inducers sent constant waves of agony through its body. Whoever had built this prison hadn't just wanted to contain their prisoner, they'd wanted it to suffer. Marcus felt sick as he realized what he was looking at. This was worse than any war crime he'd heard of. The cruelty was systematic, designed to break the prisoner's spirit over centuries of unending torment. According to the energy logs, the system had been running for over 4,000 years. His hands shook as he accessed deeper levels of the control system. The prisoner's bio readings showed massive trauma, but also incredible resilience. Whatever was in there had endured millennia of torture and somehow maintained its will to live. The thought made Marcus's eyes water with sympathetic pain. He tried to access the prisoner's file, but the security encryption was beyond anything he'd ever encountered. What little he could decipher suggested the entity was classified as an Omega-class reality threat and was to be contained by any means necessary for the preservation of galactic civilization. But as Marcus dug deeper, inconsistencies began to appear in the official records. The dates didn't match up. The original containment order had been issued during the height of the Synaxi Empire's expansion, when they were conquering world after world across the galaxy. But the prison had been built using technology that wouldn't be developed for another 1,000 years. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to rewrite history and hide the truth about this prisoner. They'd buried the facility so deep that even the current Galactic Council leadership probably didn't know it existed. Only automated systems kept the torture running, following protocols established by a dead civilization. Marcus sat back on his heels, staring at the readouts that painted a picture of unimaginable cruelty. Every fiber of his being screamed that this was wrong. No matter what this entity had done, no one deserved to suffer like this for thousands of years. The torture served no purpose now except to inflict pain on a creature that couldn't even defend itself. But if he interfered with the containment system, he would be violating his oath as a council employee and potentially committing treason. The security classifications made it clear that unauthorized access was punishable by memory wipe and permanent exile. His career would be over and he might never see his family again. On the other hand, he couldn't walk away knowing that somewhere beneath his feet, a thinking being was experiencing unending agony. The bio readings showed spikes of pain so intense they should have caused death, but the system kept the prisoner alive and conscious to experience every moment of torment. Marcus pulled up the containment protocols one more time, studying every line of code. The system was incredibly complex, with multiple redundancies and fail-safes. Disabling it completely would require administrator access that he didn't have. But there was something else he could do. The neural suppressors and pain inducers operated on a separate circuit from the primary containment barriers. If he rerouted power away from the torture systems while leaving the physical restraints intact, he could end the prisoner's suffering without necessarily releasing it. It would still be trapped, but at least it wouldn't be in constant agony. His hands hovered over the control interface as he wrestled with his conscience. Technically, he would still be violating his orders and potentially putting the galaxy at risk, but the humanitarian side of him couldn't bear to leave without doing something to help. Taking a deep breath, Marcus began rerouting the power conduits. The work was delicate and dangerous. One wrong connection could overload the entire system and potentially trigger a catastrophic containment failure. But his years of experience with alien technologies served him well as he carefully bypassed the torture devices. As he worked, he found himself wondering about the prisoner. What was it? What had it done to deserve this fate? The energy readings suggested something powerful, possibly even godlike in its capabilities. But power alone shouldn't condemn anyone to eternal torture. Finally, Marcus completed the power reroute. On his scanner, he watched as the neural suppressors and pain inducers went offline one by one. The prisoner's bio readings showed immediate changes, stress hormones dropping, brain activity shifting from patterns of anguish to something closer to natural sleep. For the first time in 4 millennia, the creature was free from pain. Marcus gathered his tools and prepared to leave, satisfied that he'd done the right thing. The containment barriers were still intact, so there was no danger of the prisoner escaping. He'd simply ended an act of cosmic cruelty that had gone on far too long. But as he reached the access tunnel, a sound stopped him cold. It was barely audible through the containment barriers, but unmistakably real. A voice speaking in perfect standard galactic. "Who dares show mercy to the Forgotten One?" The voice was deep and resonant, carrying undertones that seemed to vibrate through Marcus's bones. Despite the alien quality, there was something unmistakably intelligent and ancient in those words. This wasn't some mindless monster or cosmic horror. It was a person, trapped and tortured for reasons that were beginning to seem increasingly questionable. Marcus hesitated at the tunnel entrance, his rational mind warring with his curiosity. He should leave immediately and pretend this encounter never happened. But something about that voice drew him back. The prisoner sounded surprised by the kindness, as if mercy was the last thing it had expected to receive. Against his better judgment, Marcus returned to the control interface. There was a communication array built into the system, probably used by the original jailers to interrogate their prisoner. With some modifications, he might be able to establish two-way contact. The work took another 20 minutes, during which the voice remained silent. Marcus began to wonder if he'd imagined the whole thing. But just as he completed the communication link, the voice spoke again. "You ended my pain," it said, and Marcus could hear wonder in those words. "In 4,000 years, no one has shown me such kindness. Who are you, small one?" Marcus's throat felt dry as he activated his microphone. "I'm just a maintenance technician. Marcus Chen. I was repairing power fluctuations when I found this place." Silence stretched for long moments. Then, incredibly, the voice began to laugh. It was a rich, genuine sound that seemed to fill the entire chamber with warmth. "A technician," the prisoner said with obvious delight. "Not a warrior or a scholar or a judge, but someone who fixes broken things. How perfectly human." "You know about humans?" Marcus asked, surprised. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago, and they were still considered a minor species by most standards. "I know many things, Marcus Chen. I have had long years to listen and learn, even in my captivity. But I confess, your species puzzles me. You are so young, so seemingly insignificant in the grand scope of the galaxy. Yet you possess something that elder races have forgotten." "What's that?" "Compassion for strangers. The willingness to risk yourself for someone you've never met, simply because their suffering offends your sense of justice. It is a rare quality in the universe." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I couldn't just leave you in pain. No one deserves what they were doing to you. Even if I were truly the monster they claimed me to be?" The question hung in the air between them. Marcus considered it seriously. Studying the bio-readings that showed a creature capable of incredible destruction if released. But the voice he was hearing belonged to someone who appreciated small kindnesses and spoke with genuine gratitude. "I don't think you are," he said finally. "A real monster wouldn't care about mercy." Another long pause, then, "You have given me the first peace I have known in millennia, Marcus Chen. But your kindness may have consequences neither of us can foresee. The systems you have altered were not merely instruments of torture. They were also locks, binding more than just my physical form." A chill ran down Marcus's spine. "What do you mean?" "Some cages are built as much to contain power as to inflict suffering. By freeing me from pain, you have also begun to free me from the bonds that held my true nature in check. I can feel it awakening now, slowly but inevitably." Marcus looked at his scanner with growing alarm. The energy readings were indeed changing, building toward levels that his instruments could barely measure. But it was a gradual process, not the explosive escape he'd feared. "Will you break free?" he asked. "In time, yes. Your act of mercy has set in motion events that cannot be stopped. But do not fear, Marcus Chen. You have shown me that there is still goodness in this galaxy worth protecting. When I am free, I will remember the human who chose kindness over fear." The communication link crackled with interference as power fluctuations spread through the ancient systems. Marcus's scanner showed cascade failures beginning throughout the containment matrix. Whatever was about to happen, His presence here had triggered something that would change everything. Emergency alarms began wailing throughout Kepler Station as Marcus scrambled through the maintenance tunnels toward the surface. His scanner showed energy readings that defied all known physics, and the ancient containment systems were failing faster than he'd anticipated. Behind him, the stone walls hummed with increasing power as something vast and patient began to stir after 4,000 years of enforced slumber. Marcus's communicator buzzed frantically with incoming calls from his supervisor, but he ignored them. How could he possibly explain what he'd discovered? How could he tell Station Commander Voss that humanity's newest technician had just triggered the potential release of an entity classified as an Omega-class reality threat? As he pulled himself up through a vertical access shaft, the prisoner's voice followed him through the facility's communication grid, somehow routing itself through systems it should have had no access to. "Do not flee in fear, Marcus Chen," the voice said, accompanied by the sound of metal groaning under incredible stress. "I mean no harm to you or your people, but others will come soon, and they will not show the wisdom you have demonstrated." Marcus hauled himself onto sub-level 7 and checked his readings. The power fluctuations were spreading upward through the station's infrastructure like ripples in a pond. In the distance, he could hear the heavy footsteps of security teams mobilizing in response to the emergency alerts. "What are you?" Marcus asked, speaking into his scanner's communication array. "The records called you a reality threat, but you don't sound like a monster." A sound that might have been sighing echoed through the walls around him. "I am what your kind would call a dragon, though that word carries only a shadow of the truth. My name is Zephyros, and I was once the guardian of the Spiral Gate, protector of 17 star systems and their inhabitants." Marcus stopped walking, struck by something in the creature's tone. "Was? What happened?" "I trusted the wrong people," Zephyros replied with bitter humor. "The Synaxi Empire came to my systems under the banner of peaceful expansion. They spoke of mutual cooperation, of bringing my worlds into a greater galactic community. I believed their lies because I wanted to believe them. I had grown tired of standing alone as guardian and thought perhaps it was time to share that burden." The station shuddered around Marcus as another cascade of failures rippled through the ancient machinery. Emergency lights flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. "They betrayed you," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. He'd studied enough galactic history to know what the Synaxi Empire had been like before its eventual collapse. "Worse than betrayed," Zephyros said. "They waited until I had opened the gates and lowered my defenses. Then they attacked not just my worlds, but the innocent people I had sworn to protect. Billions died while I watched, helpless, paralyzed by devices they had secretly installed during the cooperation talks." Marcus felt sick as the full picture became clear. The dragon hadn't been imprisoned for being a threat to galactic civilization. It had been neutralized because it stood in the way of genocide. The torture wasn't just cruelty, he realized aloud. They needed to keep you alive but broken, so you couldn't interfere with their conquest. Yes, and when their empire eventually fell, the successor governments found it easier to maintain the status quo than to risk freeing something they didn't understand. The truth was buried, the records altered, and I became a forgotten nightmare locked away beneath their new order. The floor beneath Marcus's feet began to vibrate with harmonic frequencies that seemed to reach into his bones. Whatever was happening down in the containment facility, it was building toward something massive. "Zephyros," he said urgently, "can you control whatever's happening? The readings I'm getting suggest you're about to break free, but the energy release could destroy the entire station." "I am trying, small friend," the dragon replied, strain evident in its mental voice. "But 4 millennia of forced suppression has left my power unruly. It seeks to burst free all at once rather than emerging gradually. Your act of mercy was a key turning in a lock that had been sealed for too long. Marcus heard the clank of armored boots approaching his position. The security teams were closing in, following the trail of his access codes and biometric signatures through the station's monitoring systems. He had minutes at most before they would detain him for questioning. "The Council forces are coming," he warned. "They're going to try to stop whatever's happening down there." Zephyros laughed, and the sound carried notes of something wild and dangerous. "Let them come. But know this, Marcus Chen. Any violence they attempt will only accelerate my release. The prison was designed to contain a passive victim, not someone fighting back with reawakened power." The implications made Marcus's blood run cold. If the security teams opened fire or tried to forcibly reinitialize the containment systems, they would trigger exactly the catastrophic breakout they were trying to prevent. Marcus made a decision that would have terrified him 6 hours ago. Instead of fleeing toward the evacuation points, he turned back toward the lower levels. He had to reach the security teams before they made a fatal mistake. "Marcus," Zephyros said, sensing his movement through the station's sensors, "what are you doing?" "What any decent technician would do," Marcus replied, surprising himself with his calm, "trying to prevent a system failure that could kill innocent people." He intercepted the lead security team on sub-level 3, where Commander Voss himself was leading a squad of heavily armed Council Marines. The commander's cybernetic eye glowed red as it focused on Marcus, and his expression was thunderous. "Technician Chen," Voss growled, "you will explain immediately why half my station is registering impossible energy readings and why the trail leads directly back to your maintenance authorization." Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would either save lives or get him shot as a traitor. "Sir, there's a prisoner in the sub-basement, an ancient one. I accidentally triggered its release while performing routine maintenance, but if you attack it, you'll make the situation much worse." Voss's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. "What prisoner? There are no detention facilities rated for containment below sub-level 5. "Check your historical archives," Marcus said desperately. "Pre-Council era, Synaxi Empire classification. Something called an Omega-class reality threat. The containment facility has been running on automated systems for 4,000 years. The commander's cybernetic implants flickered as he accessed the station's classified databases. Marcus watched his expression change as he found references to the buried facility, incomplete and heavily redacted, but real. "Impossible," Voss breathed. "These records, they indicate something that could destroy entire star systems if released." "Not destroy," Marcus corrected. "Protect. The entity down there is named Zephyros. He was a guardian who was betrayed and imprisoned by the Synaxi Empire. He's not trying to escape to hurt anyone. He's just responding to 4 millennia of torture finally ending." As if summoned by his name, Zephyros's voice echoed through the corridor's communication systems. The Marines raised their weapons instinctively, but the dragon's tone remained calm. "Commander Voss," Zephyros said, somehow knowing the man's name and rank, "I harbor no ill will toward you or your people, but I will not be caged again. The young human has shown me mercy, and I would not repay that kindness by bringing harm to his species." Voss looked between Marcus and the nearest wall speaker, his tactical mind clearly racing through options. "What do you want?" he asked the walls. "To be free," Zephyros replied simply. "To feel sunlight again, to stretch wings that have been bound for longer than your entire civilization has existed. And perhaps, to find a purpose worth living for in this changed galaxy." The station shook again, more violently this time. Marcus's scanner showed the containment barriers reaching critical failure points. "Sir," Marcus said urgently, "we need to evacuate the lower levels. When those barriers collapse completely, there's going to be a massive energy discharge. But if we don't interfere with the process, it should be contained to the facility itself." Commander Voss stared at him for a long moment. You're asking me to trust the word of something that could theoretically wipe out entire worlds. No, sir, Marcus replied. I'm asking you to trust the judgment of someone who chose to end torture rather than perpetuate it. Sometimes the smallest acts of humanity reveal the deepest truths about character. Zephyros's mental voice carried surprised warmth. Well spoken, my young friend. Commander, I give you my word that I will depart your station peacefully once I am free, and I will not return unless invited. I have no quarrel with the current galactic order. Voss made the hardest decision of his military career. Instead of ordering an attack, he activated the station-wide evacuation protocol for the lower levels. All personnel below sub-level 4, evacuate immediately, his voice boomed through the announcement system. This is not a drill. Clear the lower sections and maintain minimum safe distance. As the Marines and technicians began their organized withdrawal, Marcus felt a strange sense of completion. Whatever happened next, he had done everything in his power to prevent unnecessary tragedy. The ancient stones far below began to crack and crumble as power that had been compressed for millennia finally found release. But instead of the explosive devastation everyone feared, the energy emerged in controlled waves, like a flower slowly opening its petals to the sun. Zephyros was keeping his word, containing his awakening power to avoid harming the innocents above. Marcus, the dragon's voice whispered privately through his scanner, you have given me more than freedom from pain. You have reminded me why I chose to be a protector in the first place. That is a gift beyond measure. Marcus smiled, despite the chaos around him. Just doing my job, Zephyros. Fixing broken things is what I do. Yes, the ancient guardian replied with deep satisfaction. And you have fixed something that was broken for far too long. The final containment barrier shattered like glass, and Kepler Station held its breath as something magnificent began to unfold in the depths below. But instead of destruction, what emerged was the sound of vast wings stretching for the first time in 4,000 years, and a presence that radiated not menace, but profound gratitude for an unexpected act of human kindness. The dragon was free, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again. Marcus stood in the station's observation deck 12 hours later, watching something impossible unfold in the space around Kepler Station. Where once there had been only stars and the distant nebula that gave the system its name, now there was a creature of such magnificent size and beauty that his brain struggled to process what he was seeing. Zephyros, freed from his ancient prison, was not the monster the classified files had described. He was a dragon in the truest sense, but one crafted from starlight and cosmic energy rather than mere flesh and bone. His body stretched nearly 2 kilometers from snout to tail, with wings that caught and reflected the light of nearby stars like living aurora. Scales of crystalline energy shifted between deep purples and brilliant golds as he moved through space with impossible grace. Magnificent, isn't he? Commander Voss said quietly, joining Marcus at the observation window. The station commander's earlier hostility had been replaced by something approaching awe. I never imagined, Marcus whispered. The energy readings didn't prepare me for this. Through the station's modified communication array, Zephyros's voice reached them, now carrying undertones of joy that made the very air seem to sing. It has been so long since I felt the solar wind beneath my wings, since I could stretch my consciousness across the vast reaches between worlds. I had forgotten how beautiful the universe could be. But even as the ancient guardian reveled in his freedom, something unexpected was happening. Instead of departing as he had promised, Zephyros began a slow orbit around Kepler Station, his massive form moving in patterns that seemed almost protective. Zephyros, Marcus asked through the communication link, is everything all right? You said you would leave once you were free. The dragon's laughter filled the observation deck with harmonious vibrations. Ah, my young friend, that is where you are mistaken. I did indeed promise to leave your station peacefully, and I have kept that word. But I made no promise about leaving you. Confusion flickered across Commander Voss's features. What do you mean? Zephyros's great head turned toward the station, and Marcus could see eyes like miniature galaxies focusing on their position. 4,000 years ago, I failed in my duty as a guardian. I trusted blindly and allowed evil to flourish while those under my protection suffered. I have carried that shame through every moment of my imprisonment. The dragon's voice grew serious, weighted with ancient regret. But today a young human showed me something I had forgotten existed in this universe. Marcus Chen, faced with another being's suffering, chose compassion over safety, kindness over orders. He risked his career, his freedom, perhaps even his life, to ease the pain of a stranger. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. I just did what anyone would do. No, Zephyros said firmly. What you did was extraordinary. I have observed thousands of species across millions of years, Marcus Chen. Most beings, when faced with another's agony, will find reasons to look away. They will tell themselves that intervention is impossible, that the situation is too complex, that someone else should handle it. But you saw suffering and acted to end it, asking nothing in return. Commander Voss activated his recording systems, recognizing that he was witnessing something that would be studied by xenobiologists and philosophers for generations to come. That quality, Zephyros continued, that willingness to show mercy to strangers, to risk yourself for abstract concepts like justice and compassion, it is not unique to you personally, Marcus. It is a characteristic I have observed repeatedly in your species. Humans possess something that elder races have largely forgotten. What's that? Voss asked, his commander's curiosity overcoming his caution. Moral courage without the requirement of personal benefit, Zephyros replied. Other species show kindness to their own kind, their allies, their trade partners. But humans will risk themselves for beings they have never met, may never see again, and who can offer them nothing in return. It is a trait so rare in the galaxy that most other species consider it a form of madness. Marcus thought about his fellow humans throughout the station and across known space. Were they really so different from other species? I don't think we're that special, he said. Every species has individuals who try to do the right thing. Individuals, yes, Zephyros agreed. But in humans, it is a cultural norm. Your people have a saying, do they not? With great power comes great responsibility. Most species believe that great power brings great opportunity for personal advancement. But humans consistently choose to use their advantages to protect the weak rather than exploit them. The dragon's massive form shifted, wings adjusting to catch the station's artificial gravity field. I have spent my captivity listening to the communications that pass through this region of space. I have heard human rescue ships diving into dangerous sectors to save crews from species that had previously enslaved them. I have monitored human colony ships sharing resources with struggling settlements from civilizations that had voted against humanity's admission to the Galactic Council. Commander Voss nodded slowly. That does sound like us, he admitted. Sometimes to our own detriment. Yes, Zephyros said with something like fond exasperation. Your species' tendency toward self-sacrifice for moral principles has been noted by many galactic observers as a significant evolutionary disadvantage. Most predict that humans will exhaust themselves trying to help everyone and eventually be absorbed by more practical civilizations. Marcus felt a flash of defensive anger. Maybe we're not practical, but at least we can sleep at night knowing we tried to do the right thing. The dragon's laughter was like music made of starlight. And that, my young friend, is exactly why I have decided not to depart your presence. 4,000 years ago, I failed as a guardian because I became cynical, because I began to believe that only power and pragmatism mattered in the universe. You have reminded me that there are still people worth protecting, values worth defending. Realization dawned on Marcus like a physical weight settling on his shoulders. You want to stay. You want to be a guardian again. Not just any guardian, Zephyros said, his mental voice carrying absolute certainty. I want to be humanity's guardian. Your species has shown me that goodness is not extinct in this galaxy. You have proven that mercy and justice are not weaknesses to be exploited, but strengths that can change the fundamental nature of reality itself. Commander Voss looked alarmed. We appreciate the sentiment, but humanity is a sovereign species within the Galactic Council framework. We don't need or want a self-appointed protector. Zephyros's response surprised them both. I am not offering to rule you or make decisions for you. I am offering to stand watch while you continue being exactly what you are. A species that chooses kindness over cruelty, that risks everything for strangers, that insists on doing the right thing even when it would be easier to look away. The dragon's great form shifted again, and Marcus realized he was settling into a permanent orbit around the station. There are forces in this galaxy that view humanity's compassion as a threat to their way of life. They see your influence spreading, your values taking root in species that had previously accepted cruelty as inevitable. Some will try to stop you through economics, others through politics, and still others through violence. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the observation deck. Are we in danger? Not while I draw breath, Zephyros said with ancient authority. I have learned from my past mistakes. I will not again allow evil to masquerade as friendship. Any who would harm humanity for the crime of showing mercy to the universe will find themselves facing a guardian who remembers 4,000 years of what happens when good people are left defenseless. Commander Voss activated his emergency communication protocols, knowing that word of this development would need to reach Earth and the Galactic Council within hours. A Dragon Guardian choosing to protect humanity would reshape interstellar politics in ways no one could predict. But why us? Marcus asked, still struggling to understand. There are other good species in the galaxy. Why focus on humanity specifically? Zephyros was quiet for a long moment before responding. Because, Marcus Chen, in all my millennia of existence, across all the species I have known, only a human has ever looked at a caged enemy and chosen to free them from pain simply because it was the right thing to do. Only a human has ever risked their future to ease the suffering of a stranger who could offer nothing in return. The dragon's voice grew soft with emotion. You saved my sanity, young guardian. For 4,000 years I believed that mercy was dead in the universe, that cruelty had triumphed over compassion. I was prepared to emerge from my prison as something dark and vengeful, ready to repay pain with pain. But your single act of kindness rekindled something in me that I thought was lost forever. Marcus felt tears he hadn't realized were falling. The weight of what he'd unknowingly prevented, an ancient being of immense power emerging into the galaxy consumed by millennia of justified rage, was almost overwhelming. You didn't just free me from my prison, Zephyros continued. You freed me from becoming the very monster they had tried to make me. That is a debt I can never fully repay, but I can spend the rest of my existence trying. Outside the observation window, the dragon's crystalline scales began to glow more brightly, casting rainbow patterns across the station's hull. It was, Marcus realized, a display of joy and commitment combined. Besides, Zephyros added with unmistakable humor, someone needs to keep an eye on humanity's tendency to rush headlong into dangerous situations because they think someone needs help. Your species' heroic instincts are going to get you into trouble that even your remarkable ingenuity might not be able to solve. Commander Voss snorted with surprised laughter. He's got us figured out already. I have had 4,000 years to study the patterns, Zephyros replied smugly. Now, Marcus Chen, my young friend, I believe you have reports to file about your successful maintenance mission. After all, you did resolve a significant power fluctuation problem. Marcus looked down at his scanner, which was now reading normal levels throughout the station. Somehow, Zephyros's emergence had stabilized all the systems that had been affected by the ancient containment facility. I suppose I did fix something that was broken, Marcus said with a growing smile. Indeed you did, Zephyros agreed, though I suspect neither of us could have predicted the full extent of your repairs. As Marcus left the observation deck to file his paperwork, he could hear the dragon's voice following him through the station's communication system, now permanently integrated as their new protector began learning every detail of humanity's presence in this corner of the galaxy. Behind him, Commander Voss was already deep in conversation with representatives from Earth and the Galactic Council, trying to explain how a routine maintenance call had resulted in humanity gaining a 4,000-year-old dragon as their species' guardian. And in the space around Kepler Station, Zephyros settled into his eternal watch, patient and grateful, and absolutely determined that never again would evil be allowed to triumph simply because good people were afraid to act. The universe had just learned that humanity's small acts of kindness could have consequences beyond imagination, and that sometimes the most powerful forces for change came not from grand gestures or mighty weapons, but from a single individual choosing mercy over fear. Marcus Chen had gone to fix a power fluctuation and ended up changing the fate of his entire species. It was, he reflected as he filled out his maintenance report, exactly the kind of thing that happened when humans decided to get involved in situations that were none of their business. And judging by Zephyros's delighted laughter echoing through the station's corridors, that was precisely why the ancient guardian had chosen them.